The Vanishing at Hollow Creek, the small town of Hollow Creek, Pennsylvania, was the kind of place where everyone knew their neighbors. Nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, it was quiet, the kind of quiet that made people feel safe. But on the evening of October 12, 2014, that illusion shattered. Emily Carter, a 28-year-old elementary school teacher, left her friend Sarah's house just after 9 p.m. The autumn air was crisp, the streets empty. She climbed into her blue Honda Civic, gave a final wave, and drove off into the darkness. As she turned onto the winding stretch of Old Mill Road, the trees seemed to close in around her. The headlights cut through the blackness, illuminating nothing but the cracked asphalt ahead. She fiddled with the radio, static buzzing between stations, when a flicker of movement caught her eye, something, or someone, near the tree line. Her fingers tightened on the wheel. She told herself it was just a deer. But in that split second of hesitation, the car swerved slightly, tires crunching gravel. Emily steadied the wheel, exhaling sharply. She glanced in the rearview mirror. The road behind her was empty. She never made it home. Part 1. The disappearance the next morning. The first signs of trouble appeared when Emily didn't show up for her 7:30 a.m. staff meeting. Principal Alvarez frowned at the empty. Sure, Emily had never missed a meeting without calling. By 8:15 a.m., when her third-grade class filed in to find their teacher absent, the office secretary, Mrs. Wilkins, began making calls. Sarah Thompson, Emily's closest friend since college, answered on the second ring. "No, she's not here," Sarah said, her voice tight with concern. "We had dinner last night at my place. She left around 9, said she had papers to grade." By 10 a.m., Sarah was driving the route Emily would have taken home, scanning the roadside for any sign of her friend's blue Civic. The police weren't concerned, yet adults had the right to disappear if they wanted to, but Sarah knew. Emily would never leave her students without warning. At 2:47 p.m., Hollow Creek PD officer Dan Greeley took the missing person report. He noted the details with the bored efficiency of someone who'd handled dozens of these cases, most of which resolved themselves within hours. But something about Sarah's desperate certainty made him radio in a bolo for the Civic. The break came at dusk. A county maintenance worker named Ray Callahan spotted an abandoned blue sedan halfway in the ditch on Old Mill Road. When he approached, he noticed the driver's door was slightly ajar. The interior light had burned out, casting the front seat in shadows. Ray's flashlight beam revealed Emily's purse, her phone still inside, the battery dead. Detective Mark Reynolds arrived as the last light faded. He walked the scene methodically, his boots crunching on the gravel shoulder. No skid marks, no signs of a collision. The car was in perfect working order, fuel half full. Engine cold but undamaged. The keys dangled from the ignition, like she just stepped out, Reynolds muttered to his partner. Sarah arrived minutes later, her face pale under the flashing police lights. "That's her favorite sweater," she said, pointing to a gray cardigan folded neatly on the passenger seat. "She wouldn't leave that behind." As the canine unit arrived, Reynolds noticed something held a single muddy footprint on the driver's side floor mat, too large to be Emily's. Part 2. The investigation detective Mark Reynolds stood under the flickering fluorescent lights of the Hollow Creek Police Department, staring at the caseboard that now dominated the back wall of the bullpen. Emily Carter's smiling school photo was pinned at the center, surrounded by maps, timelines, and crime scene photos. The clock read 11:37 p.m., but sleep was the furthest thing from his mind. The first 48 hours, the department had thrown everything at the case in the initial days. Search teams combed the woods along Old Mill Road, their flashlights cutting through the pre-dawn fog. Cadaver dogs worked the area where Emily's car was found, but came up empty. Divers dragged the creek near the abandoned mill, finding only rusted tools and beer bottles from decades past. Reynolds sat across from Jason Miller in the cramped interrogation room, watching the mechanic's fingers drum nervously on the metal table. "You dated Emily for what? 8 months?" Reynolds asked, flipping through his notes. "Yeah. We broke up back in June," Jason said, his eyes darting to the two-way mirror. "It was mutual." "Funny," Reynolds said, sliding a copy of Emily's phone records across the table. "Because she blocked your number on July 12th, after you called her 17 times in one night." Jason's jaw tightened. "We had some things to work out." The farmer's account 3 days into the investigation, Reynolds drove out to the weather-beaten farmhouse of Walter Haskins, the elderly man who reported hearing a scream the night Emily disappeared. The old man sat on his porch, a shotgun across his lap, watching the detective with wary eyes. "I told the other officers already," Haskins grumbled. "Heard a woman around 9:30 a.m., maybe 10. Sounded like it came from the old logging trail behind my property." Reynolds noted the location less than a mile from where Emily's car was found. "You see anything? Headlights? People walking?" Haskins spat tobacco into a coffee can. "Saw a truck parked down by the creek around that time. Didn't think nothing of it. Hunters use that access all season." The truck the lead sent Reynolds down a new path. He pulled every vehicle registration for pickup trucks in a 20-mile radius, cross-referencing with known offenders. One name kept popping up: Travis Boone, a local handyman with a record for assault. When questioned, Boone claimed he'd been drinking at the Lonesome Pine bar that night. But the bartender's statement was shaky. Place was packed, I can't remember who was here. Security footage showed Boone leaving at 9:15 p.m., giving him just enough time to reach Old Mill Road. The breakup letter, meanwhile, Sarah was cleaning out Emily's desk at school when she found an envelope tucked between lesson plans. Inside was an unsent letter addressed to Jason, dated the day before Emily disappeared. "I can't keep doing this. Your temper scares me. Last night when you put your fist through the wall," I realized the sentence ended abruptly, as if Emily had been interrupted. Sarah's hands shook as she handed it to Reynolds. The interrogation armed with the letter, Reynolds brought Jason back in. This time, the interrogation room felt smaller, the air thicker. "You never mentioned the fight," Reynolds said, sliding the letter across the table. Jason's face went pale. "That was weeks before she went missing. We worked it out." "Did you?" Reynolds leaned forward. "Because your neighbor says he heard you shouting at Emily's apartment the night before she disappeared. Said something about teaching her a lesson." Jason's breathing quickened. "I was upset, okay? But I didn't." "Didn't what?" Reynolds pressed. "Follow her? Wait on Old Mill Road? Make her pull over?" The room fell silent, except for the hum of the recording equipment. A bead of sweat rolled down Jason's temple. Part 3, The Break, the investigation into Emily Carter's disappearance, had stretched into its 6th month when the first real break came not from forensic analysis or witness testimony, but from a hunter's dog. The discovery on an unseasonably warm April morning, retired steelworker Carl Henderson trudged through the dense woods 3 miles north of Old Mill Road, his bloodhound, Duke, bounding ahead. The dog stopped abruptly at a cluster of birch trees, sniffing furiously at the ground before letting out a sharp whine. Carl pushed aside the undergrowth and saw Ita Silver Lockett, half buried in the damp earth. The initials EC were engraved on the front. His hands shook as he radioed the police, careful not to touch it further. The evidence detective Reynolds arrived within the hour, the locket now bagged and tagged. The crime lab worked quickly. Asterisk fingerprints. A partial print on the clasp matched Jason Miller's right index finger. Asterisk soil analysis. Dirt embedded in the chain's links contained traces of limestone unique to a ravine 10 miles east of Hollow Creek. Asterisk DNA. A single strand of hair tangled in the chain was confirmed as Emily's. Reynolds studied the locket under the lab's bright lights. It was a birthday gift from Emily's parents. She never took it off. If it was here, torn from her neck, then the odds of finding her alive dwindled to zero. The raid at 5:47 a.m. on April 23rd. Hollow Creek PD SWAT surrounded Jason Miller's duplex. They found him in boxers and a stained t-shirt, scrambling for his phone as officers breached the door. In his garage, tucked behind a stack of tires, was a shovel caked with dirt. The tread of his work boots matched the partial print found in Emily's car. The confession back in interrogation, Jason slumped in his chair, eyes bloodshot. Reynolds placed a photo of the locket on the table. "You want to tell me how this ended up in the woods?" Reynolds asked. Jason swallowed hard. I don't know. Maybe she dropped it when you what, Jason?" Reynolds interrupted. "When you argued. When you grabbed her. When you killed her." The dam broke. Jason's voice cracked as the story spilled out. Emily had tried to end things for good that night on Old Mill Road. Jason had followed her, flashing his high beams to force her to pull over. They'd fought by her car. He claimed she slipped, hit her head on a rock. Panicked, he'd dragged her body into his truck and driven to Blackwater Ravine. "Where is she, Jason?" Reynolds pressed. A long silence, then barely audible. "Under the big oak tree, the one split by lightning." The recovery at sunset, investigators marked a patch of disturbed earth beneath the gnarled oak. The digging took hours. Jason had buried her deep. When the coroner unzipped a body bag, Sarah turned away, sobbing. Emily's wrists showed ligature marks. The coroner's preliminary report noted a skull fracture inconsistent with a simple fall. The aftermath, Jason Miller pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, avoiding a trial. He got 25 to life. At the memorial service, Emily's students released white balloons into the sky. Sarah kept one of Emily's lesson plans folded in her wallet. And on Old Mill Road, where the trees leaned close overhead, locals swore they sometimes saw a flicker of movement in their headlights just for a second before it vanished into the dark. Jason Miller was sentenced to life in prison. Hollow Creek mourned, holding vigils in Emily's memory. The town would never be the same. But one question lingered: why Old Mill Road? Why there? Some whispered that Jason had chosen the spot deliberately, knowing how easily the woods could swallow a secret. Others wondered if Emily had been trying to escape something or someone else that night. The truth died with her. And in the quiet of Hollow Creek, the wind still carried whispers of the teacher who vanished into the dark. Part 4. The unanswered questions 1 year later. The town that never healed, Hollow Creek tried to move on. The missing posters of Emily Carter were taken down from store windows, and the nightly news crews packed up their vans. But in the quiet moments when the school bell rang at 3:15 p.m., or when the first autumn leaves began to fall, people still glanced at the empty parking spot where Emily's blue Civic used to sit. Sarah Thompson sat at the Lonesome Pine bar, swirling her drink. She had sold Emily's apartment belongings, but kept a single box of her friend's journals, photos, and that unsent breakup letter. The bartender slid another whiskey across the counter. "You ever think there was more to it?" Sarah asked Detective Reynolds, who had taken to stopping by the bar after his shifts. Reynolds exhaled. "The case is closed, Sarah." "Then why does it feel wrong?" The shovel without prints. The forensic report had always nagged at Reynolds. The shovel found in Jason's garage, the one caked with dirt from Blackwater Ravine, had been wiped clean. No fingerprints, no DNA, just smooth, polished wood. "Who cleans a shovel that well?" Reynolds muttered to his partner one night, flipping through the case file. "Someone who's done this before," his partner replied. "The truck that wasn't there, Walter Haskins, the old farmer, died that winter. When his grandson cleared out the farmhouse, he found a stack of hunting journals in the attic. One entry dated October 12, 2014 read, "Saw Travis Boone's truck parked by the creek again. Same as last month. Same as the night that girl went missing. But Boone was in jail that night. I checked. Reynolds nearly dropped the journal. Travis Boone had been in county lockup on October 12, a DUI arrest at 7:30 p.m. The truck Haskins saw couldn't have been his. So whose was it?" The phone call, Sarah found the voicemail by accident. She had kept Emily's SIM card, and while transferring old photos to a new phone, she noticed a single saved message from an unknown number. The voice was distorted, but the words were clear. "You shouldn't have written that letter, Emily. Now he'll never let you go." The call had come in at 8:47 p.m. on October 11, night before Emily disappeared. The second grave in spring, a hiker stumbled upon a second shallow grave 5 miles upstream from Blackwater Ravine. The remains were older, skeletal. A tarnished locket identical to Emily's clutched in the dirt. The coroner estimated the woman had been dead at least 10 years. The engraving read SM. The truth they buried, Detective Reynolds, stood at the edge of the new grave, staring at the evidence bag. The locket's chain was broken just like Emily's. Sarah's voice echoed in his head. Why does it feel wrong? Because Jason Miller had never been alone on Old Mill Road that night. Because Hollow Creek had been burying its secrets long before Emily Carter came along. And because somewhere in the whispering trees, another set of headlights was slowing down.